Welcome, everybody. If you just arrived, you are in the Community Support for Science session. My name is Melissa Graham, and myself, along with Jeff Carlin, we're going to be leading you through this session today. You can access the session webpage, which has links to the slide deck that we're sharing from here. And you can also join us in the Slack channel for this session if you are a member of the Rubin 2020 PCW Slack. So before we actually get going, we have 2 slides worth of reminders to review with you. The first reminder is that you signed a code of conduct when you registered, and that means that you will adhere to the principles of kindness, trust, and diversity and inclusion during this session and throughout the whole workshop. Any discriminatory behavior will not be tolerated, and if you witness it in any form, bullying, harassment, or any kind of aggression, you can follow up on that by reporting to our contacts, and you can access the contact information of the people who are identified reporters by going to the main PCW website, clicking on the resources menu item, and then selecting code of conduct, and you will find in there the resources you need to report that. Second reminder, be told to you by Jeff.
Just a reminder that all of the talks at this workshop will be recorded. So if you don't wish to be recorded, you are certainly welcome to keep your camera off. Of course, any audio that you contribute will be recorded, and the videos will be posted, and links to the videos will be embedded on the session pages for each session. We also wanted to remind you to use the emojis on Slack to show your appreciation, but also, more importantly, if somebody asks a question on Slack, the more thumbs up it gets, the more likely it is that we will get to that question. So you can ask questions through the Slack channel, or if you're not a Slack user or not comfortable using Slack, you can also ask questions in the Zoom chat, and the moderator will monitor both of those.
Yes. So today, this presentation is going to be given by myself and Jeff Carlin. My name is Melissa. I work for Rubin Observatory at the University of Washington in Seattle. I work for the data management team as a science analyst. And I'd just like to welcome Jeff, or invite Jeff to introduce himself and his role.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jeff Carlin. I also work in the data management team at Rubin Observatory, nominally headquartered in Tucson, though I'm coming to you currently from Southern California. With data management, I am a validation scientist, so I'm in charge of sort of verification and validation of the DM pipelines.
Excellent. So today we're going to do this sort of in 3 parts. The first is an overview of the community engagement team, which is sort of a new entity within Rubin, within the Rubin operations team. Then we want to talk a little bit about community.lsst.org, which is our online forum for interactions and collaboration. And we want to end with some use cases for community support. And throughout this, we invite your questions, comment at any time via the Zoom chat or the Slack chat. And Jeff's going to tell you a little bit about what kind of feedback we're looking for.
Yeah, as the community engagement team, which will explain a little more what the community engagement team entails in upcoming slides, but as the community engagement team, what we are really about is seeking feedback from the Rubin science community so that we can sort of leverage all of the experience and expertise that this vast science community has accumulated from, experiences with previous surveys, experiences with scientific support at observatories and other such settings, but also, we're sort of constantly looking for feedback about, what do you expect from support from the Rubin Observatory? Have you used the community.lsst.org And if not, were there reasons why not? We'll come back to that. You'll learn more about that in a minute. But anyway, we want to solicit feedback from you, which you can send our way via email, but we've also produced a feedback form that is linked here. And we encourage you to share feedback with us via this form at your leisure.
Yes. Excellent. I just put links to the feedback form in both the Zoom chat and the Slack, so you should have that at your fingertips. Whoopsie.
Oh, and actually, I did forget to mention that the Slack channel for this particular session is also a great place to continue discussion during the week, and we'll make a best effort to gather all of that information after the meeting's over.
Yeah. Oops. Okay, so I think we've gone over the fact that there is a Zoom chat and a Slack channel multiple times already. So please feel free to interact. And if we see questions, we might invite you to unmute, or in the interest of time, we might just speak your question out and then answer them, or we might just answer them directly in the Zoom chat. So many communication methods can be used today. So let's start with an introduction and some context for this community engagement team, the CET, which you're probably hearing about for the first time. So first, during Rubin operations, sort of the organizational structures, you have the director's office, and you have 4 main systems, which is what this slide is showing you: observatory operations, data production, system performance, and education and public outreach are the main organizational structure for Rubin Observatory in operations. The community engagement team sits within the system performance department. So the system performance department is responsible for ensuring that the LSST is proceeding with the efficiency and fidelity needed to achieve the 10-year science requirements. It's all about making sure that the science can happen. And this is why community engagement, along with maybe the more obvious things like verification and validation, survey scheduling, and systems engineering, that's why these are all together within system performance. So the scientific results, obviously, that are produced by the science community are a key success metric of the Rubin Observatory system. So the system is not performing if people are not doing their science. So that's where the community engagement team comes in. So that's some context. The main vision for the community engagement team, like I just mentioned, are that the community scientific activities are part of the system. They're part of the Rubin Observatory system, and they're a key success metric. So our goal here is to ensure diversity and inclusion in the LSST scientific community, and to maximize scientific results in the LSST science pillars, and also in new territories that arise and are enabled by the LSST data. Our general strategy for achieving this goal is sort of threefold. The first is for the CET to facilitate access to and analysis of the data products and services. And so that's primarily through education and tutorials. The second is to empower the community to collaborate and contribute, not just between community and project, but within the community itself, to collaborate with each other and contribute science results to each other's analyses. The third main component of our overall strategy is to coordinate expertise across project and community to solve issues. So when people are trying to do their science, they don't understand something about a data product, or maybe they find a bug in a science pipeline, how do we make sure that there's a system in place to make sure these issues get appropriately and efficiently resolved? So yes, so that's the vision and the goal and the strategies for the community engagement team. Just to dive a little further into that, we sort of split up the strategy into 3 CET core initiatives. And Jeff and I are going to take turns sort of explaining a little bit more about these. Jeff?
Yeah, so one of the ways that we can sort of facilitate and empower people to take advantage of Rubin data is by providing some resources including, things like documentation and making, whether it's writing documentation ourselves or just curating sets of data that we can, or documentation that we can make available. And of course, things like tutorials on how to use the science pipelines and the science platform. And one of the biggest things, which we'll hear about in a lot more detail soon, is curating a crowdsourced problem-solving opportunity, so that in the community.lsst.org site that you're going to hear more about soon, we want to make that a space where, because the CET can't possibly answer questions from thousands of users every day, we want to make that a place where some solutions can be crowdsourced, and in fact, that's also an opportunity for things to blossom, let's say.
Yes, and in addition to providing those resources, the community engagement team will also sort of serve as an interactive interface with the science community to help them learn to use those resources. So we'll be looking at doing things like participating in conferences, workshops, webinars, hackathons, that kind of thing. We'll also be moderating and actively participating in the Open Community Forum that we're going to talk about a lot in today's session. We'll be facilitating two committees, most likely, the Resource Allocation Committee and the Users Committee, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. And also to serve as liaisons to the science collaborations, as is now done by the Data Management Subsystem Science team, to make sure that there's flow of information and that we're serving, right, as I said, as an interactive interface. And our third core initiative, Jeff?
Yeah, the third initiative is to sort of coordinate expertise from various areas to sort of maximize the science yield of the project. And so, this involves sort of like being a liaison between Rubin staff scientists or data management, pipelines developers, and the community to do at a very basic level things like a user reports an issue. We can facilitate that conversation to resolve that issue with the pipelines, but we can also facilitate other sort of larger scale things like scientific assessments of changes to the pipelines, or things like user contributed algorithms or data products, or sort of added value products, and that is part of the role of the CET, is to facilitate feedback from the community contributing to the actual available data products in the end.
Excellent. That pretty much sort of covers kind of the scope of the CET moving forward into Rubin Observatory operations. And I also want to include two other important aspects of this. So I mentioned earlier that part of our vision is to ensure diversity and inclusion. And we want to make sure that we're employing diverse and inclusive research methods in order to maximize the science. I think Jeff's going to speak to the first point here.
Yeah, so we really wanted to highlight that one role that the community engagement team can play as one of the primary interfaces with the science community is to ensure that we are enacting Rubin Observatory policies regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also feeding back what we see from the community or what we hear from the community to help shape those policies. And we can do more specific things like developing, because we will be leading workshops or standing up committees like the user committee and things like that. We can also institute policies and develop policies that ensure a much more inclusive environment within the Rubin science community and the project.
That's excellent. And we're also collaborating with Noir Lab and Data Lab to increase our combined reach in this effort. And in addition, as far as diverse and inclusive research methods go, we want to make the point that citizen science is science, and especially for Rubin Observatory, the LSSD dataset holds great potential for groundbreaking new discoveries that might be uniquely enabled by citizen science methodologies. So we're including that. During operations, the community engagement team will have 2 people working at least part-time to support community efforts with their citizen science projects. So this is an example of diversity in research methods that we are including citizen science as a means for science, as a means to maximize science in the Rubin era. I think the final point that we want to make about plans for the CET and what this community engagement team might be doing in the future is make the point that there will be a users committee. This is going to be one of the primary channels for users to communicate back to the project requests for example, for science platform features that might enable their science, or anything about the Rubin data products and services that are either needed in order to complete their science or aren't quite working well enough for their science, that kind of thing. So this users committee will be in place to handle that kind of thing. It will be a subcommittee of the Science Advisory Committee, which is active now and has been for many years. The specific charge of the users committee will be to investigate the usability of the LSSD data products and services, like I just said, including the science platform and the tools available in the science platform, and then advocate for science-driven improvements. This users committee is going to report to the community engagement team and the Rubin Observatory Directorate, and the community engagement team will be responsible in part for coordinating the expertise necessary to enact those science-driven improvements. Membership of the users committee is going to be, the current plan is that they'll be appointed by the SAC and that they will represent the diverse LSSD science community, including our international affiliates. And also the current plan is to begin standing this up in mid-2021. So in the middle of next year, which is when the data previews are going to start. If you haven't heard of data previews yet, we're not going to go into them here today, but there is a commissioning session tomorrow that I think is going to talk a little bit about data previews. I think this one is the last slide about community engagement team. We really are focused on making sure that all members of this community engagement team have expertise across the LSSD science pillars. We're going to be active in using the LSSD data, and all of us will have deep project experience. This will be very important in helping users solve their science issues and maximize their science. Right now, I think we're sort of the equivalent of less than one person, as we're just sort of starting to stand up the community engagement team and define what it's going to do during operations. But this will rise to at least 7 full-time equivalent positions with staff based at NORLab and also at the DOE labs. And this is the staffing profile down in the lower right corner. So you can see it really ramps up quite quickly so that we're ready to help users when operations start, and it sort of has a bit of a taper off through the later years of the LSST. So the kinds of things that we're doing right now are developing a model for community support, which is kind of the stuff that I was just telling you about with the vision and goals and our core initiatives and setting up what we're going to do. We've been investigating options for online forums, courses, different software to help users. Been defining requirements for CET products like tutorials, documentation, that kind of thing. Assisting with the Stack Club. And I just want to point out there's a session on Friday where Stack Club will present new science platform tutorials in their Friday session. We are also facilitating user support via community.lssd.org, which we're going to talk about a lot in a moment. And also developing use cases for community support and using model-based systems engineering along with the systems engineering team that also sits within system performance for Rubin Observatory to sort of start to set up our model that will allow us to make sure we have all the components in place to handle user requests for support. Our final piece of activities that is happening now is the preparations for those data previews that I mentioned before. So hopefully that gives you at least sort of a big picture of what community engagement team is ramping up to do and what kind of the services that they plan to provide for users in operations. So I just want to pause, check the Zoom chat, check the Slack chat. Jim, if you've seen any questions go by and you want to unmute and ask for people, please do at this time.
You might invite Chris Lintott to say a few words.
Sure, Chris, if you want to unmute.
Sure, I was just saying hi because you mentioned citizen science, for which thank you. But yeah, we at the Zooniverse are very excited by working with LSST, and I'm around if anyone has questions or thoughts or ideas. I think it's really exciting to see what hundreds of thousands of people can find in the data set.
Yes, excellent. Thanks. So everyone contact Chris in the Slack. You can add him with your questions if you have them. Great, nice to meet you. So, yeah.
And Kathy Vivas has a question. Kathy?
Oh, Kathy. Kathy, would you
Hi.
like to unmute?
Yeah, so I was wondering if the interactions of the city with the community will be done mostly through the science collaborations, or do you expect to have different channels to work with the community?
Yeah, we do expect to have different channels to work with the community. We are aware that not all active LSST science users will join a science collaboration. And one of the ways, so there's a couple ways. We do want to make sure that all the resources we create are completely publicly available and visible. And you're going to see all about community.lsst.org in a moment, which is something that's not at all restricted to science collaboration members. And anyone anywhere can get an account on community.lsst.org to view the materials or just view them without an account. So it's completely public and open. So we are not restricting ourselves. We're trying to be sort of as open as possible in our communications and efforts. Yeah.
I would also add that that there should be, I guess, generally representation from each science collaboration in the community engagement team. But as Melissa said, it is a much more public-facing effort than just the science collaborations.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what Dara is pointing out, that the users committee doesn't necessarily draw a boundary at the science collaborations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, we want to have, sorry, keep going, Jim.
No, someone should ask that question formally.
Okay, yeah. We want breadth of scientific coverage, both in a users committee and on the CET, but this is sort of decoupled from membership in a particular science collaboration. Yeah, don't have to join a science collaboration.
But I didn't hear the answer to that, so let me ask the question. The users committee will have people that aren't on the project nor in the science collaboration, but from the wider community of astronomers who will use the data?
Yeah, absolutely. We expect that there will be many data rights holders using Rubin data who don't join a science collaboration, and that is fine. And we do want, the point is breadth of scientific expertise to maximize science, not necessarily membership in like a particular institution.
Hey, Melissa, can I jump in?
Bob, yeah, of course, please do.
Hi, everybody, I'm Bob Blum. I'm working on setting up the operations team as the acting director for operations. I just want to emphasize a couple things with this great discussion. We think that the science collaborations are a great way to get involved with Rubin science because there's so many resources and so many ways to connect, especially if you have little experience with Rubin and the LSST so far. But as Melissa has said, there's absolutely no requirement to be in a science collaboration. And in fact, we don't have any exclusive connections or panels or advisory committees that are only the science collaboration. We will always look to the broader community to get a representative voice from people that aren't in the science collaborations, even while we still think that's a great way to get involved with Rubin Science.
Yes, thank you, Bob, for emphasizing that. Just taking a peek for follow-up questions. Yeah, okay, I think that kind of has covered it. Yeah. Let's move on a little bit to community.lsst.org, which, if you like, you can go to and start poking around right now as we start talking about it. So if you recall, one of our core initiatives of the CIT is to build a thriving online LSST science community forum with the ability to crowdsource solutions from this deep reservoir of collected expertise that you all have. And for this, right now we are using the Discourse platform. And there's a couple of reasons why this offers an advantage to other platforms, such as Stack Overflow, which you might be familiar with. The Discourse platform is native to the web. So it allows you to, you can link, you can search very well the collected information, topics, and posts in community. The Discourse platform prioritizes user experience. It offers things like markdown, threading, and topics that we're going to show you. You can like posts, you can get notifications from it. So it's very easy to use, user-friendly, and offers a lot of variety for interactions. Also, as I previously mentioned, it's a completely open platform. It's 100% publicly viewable, so you can search for answers without even having an account, and anyone, anywhere can create an account and start interacting within the forum. It features hierarchical categorization. We're going to show you some examples of how it's easy to sort of browse and see all the topics in a given category and to navigate around. And it also features support for marking solutions, which is something that and I think other people also like about Stack Overflow, that if you have sort of a thread, someone asks a question and then there's a thread of answers, you can find the one that's the solution, mark it as the solution, and always float in that thread. And we're going to show you examples of that as well. So basically, why the Discourse platform? It has lots of features that make it very user-friendly. So we're going to kind of flow through a bunch of examples to review how people can interact with on community.lsst.org. We're starting here with Jeff.
Yeah, so this is sort of the splash page that you'll see when you log on to community.lsst.org. And so you can see that it's sort of organized like almost like a news feed where things are sort of categorized. And within those, you can see that you could unroll, like, for example, under science, you could unroll 208 posts within that. But then you can, we'll discuss in more detail all of the different buttons that you see sort of across the top, but this is just to show you sort of what you see. And you can see, I guess in this screenshot, Melissa is logged in as a user, so she's up there under my name in the top corner. And you can create a new post, which is a new topic, using that button that Melissa just pointed to. So we'll go through some of the details now.
Yes. Yeah, so the community forum is designed for both passive and active use. You can browse, you can read, like Jeff was saying, or you can post new things, or you can reply to other people's posts and have discussions. So break it down into three main use modes. One is just reading news and announcements. Like you can see, there's a whole category there for LSST news. Or you can pose questions and get answers. There are a couple of channels that are specifically sort of set up to be Q&A venues. You can see them right here under science, where there's a data Q&A and a statistics Q&A. We're going to talk about what's in those channels a little bit more later. And then also you can just have open discussions. You could share your software or your data products that you want others to use. You could solicit contributions to a project, post a pretty picture that you made for Rubin data, or just generally converse with others on any Rubin related topics. So that's It's not strictly Q&A like Stack Overflow is. There's sort of more options, more news, more interaction. Site navigation, Jeff.
Yeah, so the main sort of organizational scheme in the community site is that things are broken into categories. And so you can see an example if you click on that categories menu, you can search among them to find a category that you're looking for. But you can see sort of the drop down of sort of the broad overview categories that you see within this site. And then Melissa will tell you about another way to sort of break down into more detail.
Ah, yes, the tags. We have your name on the tags.
Oh, that's right. It's still me. Yes, because within, you know, a broad category like science, you may not be getting a specific enough search to get you to what you're really looking to find. And so if you want to go and learn about the science pipelines and maybe the data butler, then within the, you know, maybe within the science or maybe within another category, you can search on the tag butler. So anybody who creates a post on the site can add tags to help make their content more visible. And I think actually maybe the next one was assigned to me as well.
Yes.
Yes, and so you can also, you can see then, yeah, the buttons that Melissa is pointing out, that there are other sort of rolled up links here where you can go and sort things by, for example, the latest posts or things that you've bookmarked, so you can save things for later. And you can have it show you only the posts that you haven't read yet. And of course you can go and click on the My Posts button where you'll see anything that you have posted, including topics that you have replied to, so conversations that you're a part of. So you'll be able to easily get back and re-engage with those same conversations.
Yes, I think I'm just realizing we don't have an example of searching, but there is a search feature up in the corner. You just search on keyword and it'll search categories, tags, and it'll search the contents of all the topics that people have posted as well. Yeah, so it's highly browsable, but it's also very searchable. So here's an example of browsing topics that have been posted in a category. In this case, it's under the science category. I'm browsing topics under the subcategory of data Q&A. And so here are all the topics that people have posted under data Q&A, where mostly they're asking questions about the plans for, about data management's plans for creating the data products. So you can certainly browse that way. And if you did, you might find yourself at this particular topic titled Alert Format, Serialization, and Transport that has a long thread that Jeff's going to kind of take you through.
Yeah, so the way interaction happens then on community is as you saw, the button to create a new post, it says new topic. And so a topic is basically going to turn into a thread of posts. So you'll post, for example, in this case, this shows you an example of a topic that started with a question. And then there were numerous replies from, from various people, both from the community and from within the project. And then at the end, the solution was identified to this, or I guess the answer to this question really, and then tagged as a solution, so that if you don't necessarily need all of the detail from all of the posts in the thread, you can just go straight to the solution. So this could be very useful, you know, for example, if you have you're having a specific issue with the science pipelines or something like that, well, you may not be the only one. You can easily search and find the solution to that issue. But you can also see, if you're interested in the details of the conversation, you can still read the entire thread of posts on this topic.
Yeah, and I'll add that you can always reply to the post at the end, and that permissions for marking something as resolved, for marking a post as the solution. The author of the topic can mark things as resolved, and there are also a bunch of community moderators, such as community engagement team staff, who can read through this and tag the posts as solutions. So this is what it looks like when you want to create a new topic in a category. You put your title in there, you've got your category set, you can add tags if you want to, and then down here you can type your post that's going to create the new topic. You can use Markdown. There are ways to properly format your code, which makes your post look really nice. You can also embed LaTeX in there. We have a link later to show you how to do that. So it makes it look really nice. And then over here in this space that is currently blank, as you start typing in your Markdown, it shows you what it's going to look like when it's posted. So it's like an automatic live preview that you get while you're creating a new topic, which is really nice. Back to Jeff.
And it has the, there is also a category for basically to learn how to use community, and within which you can ask questions about features and ways of using the platform. And so if you are new, you can start in the meta category. And in fact, I just found in preparing for this for this presentation, I found that I could not figure out some behavior and had to ask a question in the meta category and had it answered within a few minutes. So this is also a way to sort of just learn about what people have found to be very useful and just the basics of how to use the platform in the meta category.
And another great place to check out if you are new is the tag forum-how-to. And these are all, they're usually topics that have been posted in Meta, but they're specifically how-to questions, like how do I embed code in my post? How do I embed LaTeX in my post to make things look nice? You can see some other examples, like how to understand what flat threading is, how do I turn off notifications, that kind of thing. So that's also there for you if you are new. And back to Jeff.
Yeah, and as Melissa alluded to earlier, we have some categories that are specifically designed to as sort of help desk type categories. So if you have a question or you need some help with your analysis tools or something about the data, these are some of the avenues that are specifically monitored channels that either the community engagement team or other groups will monitor these. So that if you post in, for example, the science data Q&A category with a question about the Rubin Observatory data products or the science platform, these will be seen almost immediately by people in the data management team and answered pretty quickly, usually when we're able to. There are other Q&A categories like the statistics Q&A, which is facilitated by the Informatics and Statistics Science Collaboration, where you're encouraged to ask statistics related questions on anything related to astronomical data analysis, not necessarily specific to the Rubin Observatory. And so this will be moderated by members of that science collaboration. And then there is the support category, which is one that is specifically monitored by community engagement team staff, but also this is a place where you can ask a question and maybe somebody else in the community. What we're hoping is because a few people cannot handle thousands of questions per day, which we anticipate will be sort of the volume of things once the survey is underway. The hope is that somebody else in the community has also encountered this issue or has also come up with a nifty solution to whatever question that you might have. And so you could ask that in the support channel, and somebody either from the project or from the community can offer you support. And back to Melissa.
Yeah, and the data management team is also extremely active in trying to help people in the support channel, especially with the science pipelines. And I also want to point out that the statistics Q&A category is very new. I think they might not have any topics posted in there yet. So don't let that deter you. If you go there and you find there's no topics, please, be the first. That would be great. They're ready to help you with your statistics needs. So one final comment, I think this is the last comment about community, is if you do prefer to get emails instead of going to the website and interacting and browsing, there's this post in Meta about signing up and subscribing to emails for all new topics in whatever your category or tag of interest is. So it's definitely a feature that you can set up for yourself to use with community. So here we want to pause, look at the Zoom chat and the Slack chat for questions about community. And also again, re-emphasize that our feedback form solicits your response, your experiences, your likes and dislikes about using the community forum, which we would love to hear. So, looking at the Zoom chat. Question about the website. Yes. Yes, there will be lots of information stored in community.lsst.org. And the question is, can we talk more about future plans for updating the Rubin Observatory webpage? Yes, there is a massive effort on right now to redesign the Rubin Observatory webpage. And while we talked before about the more static kind of resources that the community engagement team would be creating, like documentation, tutorials, the Jupyter notebooks, there will be more, all of those would not be stored within communities. And we're still actively researching whether we want to store them in like lists on the website, or if we want to have sort of online courses, kind of like Coursera, if you're familiar with online courses, where we sort of store tutorials and things like that. But so I think, Meg, the answer to your question is yes, for static resources, they will be stored in a website, which will be very searchable, where you'll be able to find these kinds of like informative resources, and community is not the only source for finding information, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Melissa, I would also add that the that one other thing that the community engagement team wants to do is to periodically post to community where we maybe point out and summarize some resources. So we can create things that that show you, how do you get to, I don't know, these, where would I find out things about key numbers about the survey, like the photometric depth in the 10-year survey or something like that. We can sort of highlight things by occasionally posting and starting conversations, but also making that sort of linkage very direct between community and the website.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Meg, if you're here and you want to unmute and follow up, please feel free to.
Yeah, thanks,
Sure.
Melissa. To jump in. So I'll confirm that all of the public-facing websites, so what lsst.org is right now, will move into the control of what the EPO team is currently designing and will be maintaining into operations. And that's for an audience of non-specialists. So we'll be focusing on members of the general public. And then anything that is for scientists will be under the purview of the community engagement team as described. And we're still working out exactly what the website architecture looks like and things like that. But I support everything that Melissa and Jeff just said.
And then Meg, if you want to unmute and follow up, now's the time.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one point, was just not, I think you answered most of it, but just also there's a lot of useful things on community, but if you don't know how to search for it, you don't know how to get to it. And so just asking, part of the question I was asking was, do you have plans for ways of linking those really useful posts you write in community into the web page architecture as well, which you just didn't touch much about? Because there's a lot you already wrote on community, but if I don't know the right tags to use or the right thing to search, because there is really a big ramp up, I think, at least my science collaboration, for getting into understanding the Rubin ecosystem to ask the right question. So just if there's plans for having things like really useful overview posts that you already have in community, you'll link to the web page and vice versa. So they kind of fuse a little bit, because right now you really have to know what thing you're looking for, because there's a lot of DM posts, right? If you go to certain tags, and it can be information overload to find the thing, but it's probably there in community. So maybe that's tied in with the architecture for moving forward with the website, but just wasn't clear if you'd thought about sort of ways of linking those.
Yeah, I do, and we still are thinking about them. I try to cross-reference to existing materials like as much as possible, which you will experience if you've ever had me like reply to a community post and I link to the DPDD, the data products definitions document. So definitely we try to really, the point is to make use of this deep well of expertise. And so making sure that that information is accessible is key, and making sure the cross-referencing is there. So some of the things we're thinking about, we might need to clean up community. We might need new tags, less tags, or some kind of review of the material that's in there to make it more accessible, these are all options we're still kind of considering, that we might need to take a little bit more active control of what's in there, setting up the categories a bit different. This is also part of the feedback form. We're looking for feedback about exactly this kind of thing, and what makes it hard to find things in community, because we can do some restructuring if we think that's going to help people.
Yeah, I was going to suggest the same, that this is an excellent feedback that we would love to hear more about, Meg.
Melissa?
Jim?
Yeah, you might want to ask Dara if she wants to bring forward a fascinating thread that's going on in the Slack.
Sure. Dara, would you like to unmute and speak?
Hi there. I actually haven't been following the Slack. I assume this is coming from the comment that I put in about just clarifying my my comment about the user committee, and saying that my thought about having people was more just to make sure there's some feedback from people who, you know, are not in the science collaborations, and especially people who maybe have been in the past in the science collaborations and become estranged from them. So.
Can I briefly make a point about that? This is Federica.
Hey, Fed, sure.
Hi. I think that the only point that I've encountered about resistance to join the science collaboration is just general resistance to having a membership that some people prefer not to engage with. And also a general misunderstanding that still exists among some people, that the participation in the science collaboration may require a fee corresponding to the fact that, you know, kind of along the lines of the fact that international communities had to purchase data rights with a fee. And I think the concepts got conflated, and I still encounter people that think that participating in the science collaboration requires being a member of some fee-supported organization, such as, for example, a member of the LSST Corporation as a member institute. I wanted also to point out that the science collaboration are extremely inclusive. They've been extremely inclusive historically, and they've grown more inclusively in recent times. Most of them have membership applications that are really just nominal to assure that people are interested in participating and to understand the level at which they want and they can contribute. But they are generally an extremely open and welcoming environment that is definitely focusing a lot on making the content of the work and the Rubin content in general inclusive and accessible.
Can I echo something that Fed said about the misunderstanding about the science collaborations? I think there's also a misunderstanding about how much time commitment you're required to put into it in order to be a member. And so I think that also is making people hesitant to join.
That's true.
Misunderstandings.
I agree. I have heard that as well. But again, to emphasize that in general, most science collaboration have an extremely low barrier of commitment to join, if any. This was not always the case. It is true that some science collaboration had requirements on number of hours that you planned on spending working within the science collaboration, but to my knowledge, those don't exist anymore in any of the science collaborations.
Excellent. They sound like good points maybe to raise in Wednesday's plenary. Probably you were going to already, since Wednesday's plenary is all about science collaborations. Yes. Okay, thank you all for these comments. And just I'm going to redraw your attention to this feedback form. If you are joining us today and you have had issues joining science collaborations in the past, question number 1 on that feedback form is about your past experiences. So we definitely like to hear them. The form is totally anonymous as well, by the way. So please go right ahead and use that form. I think in the last couple of minutes here that we have, and also please continue all of these discussions on the Slack channel, and any questions we don't get to answer that have come in through the Zoom chat, I will pull out of the Zoom chat and I will answer them in the Slack channel later, or we will as a team. So they will be answered even if we don't get to them here. In the last couple of minutes, I think we just want to talk a little bit about use cases, because this is another item of feedback that we would like, and it's another contribution from the science community that we're hoping to collect. So the community engagement team is working with systems engineering, both of which being in systems performance, to employ model-based systems engineering practices to develop community engagement use cases to ensure that our workflows, requirements, our components, our policies, our metrics all support scientific performance. So we just want to quickly review at least 1, maybe 2 if we have time, use cases, just to give you a sense of what we mean by a use case, so that you could think up some on your own and submit them via the form. And then also in this slide deck, which is linked from the session webpage, we have a bunch more additional use cases that sort of detail the process that would happen if, for example, a user needs to get community help with a large query, or when you might identify a bug in the science platform, or when you think the survey won't meet LSST science requirements, or the sequence of events that might occur if a camera fault requires a modification of the alert stream. These are all sort of use cases where the community engagement team works with the community to solve a problem, and they all sort of go through the process that we're trying to understand. So I think Jeff is going to sort of take us through this generic sequence of events of the community engagement team use case. Jeff?
Yes. Yeah. So the purpose of sort of working through these use cases is so that, you know, to try and anticipate at least some of the most common sort of issues that we expect to arise, and think through how are we going to ensure that we're prepared to deal with that issue. So this is a very generic overview of sort of how we're organizing our thoughts. So you know, imagine you'll see a specific example of this on the next slide, but, you know, some scientific issue is identified directly by the community engagement team or brought to the attention of the CET. And this can either be from somebody within the project or from the user community. And so then once it comes to the attention of the CET, we'll create an issue ticket that we assign to the most relevant CET member. Reminder that the CET is comprised of members of all of the various science collaborations. So there should be somebody with the relevant expertise. And we can also, of course, flag other people who have relevant expertise who we might want to draw upon. And then we'll coordinate that expertise within the project and with the community, gathering, just sort of facilitating the entire process so that work can proceed and to resolve the issue. And then once the issue is resolved, the community engagement team will sort of circulate the sort of issue resolution, information about the issue resolution to the community and update documentation as needed. So I think Melissa has a more specific example of one of these.
Yeah, the next slide is a more specific example that uses, the example of where the user community identifies a science-driven modification that must be made to a data product. So in this case, our sort of use case, our imaginary use case is that during a workshop on time-domain astronomy, a scientist presents results based on LSST data that show a large systematic offset in the occurrence rates of nuclear transients in different types of host galaxies. And during this presentation, they point to an issue with the LSST detection efficiencies. So this is sort of the first component is an issue is identified. And this might come to the attention of the community engagement team via noticing the paper that this presentation is based on, maybe viewing the presentation, maybe somebody submits a question to community asking about detection efficiencies. In some way, it gets into the community engagement team, who then create an issue ticket assigned to the community scientist, that's a CET member that has expertise in time-domain astronomy. They might add relevant watchers from data production, especially from the alert production team and the difference image analysis team. At that point, the community engagement team might take on the responsibility of reaching out to the community scientists and also to the relevant data production members to collect information on this issue and to coordinate a solution. And so so this is the coordinated expertise component of our 3 core initiatives. That's the role that we're playing there. Once the work has started, work proceeds. A solution, in this particular use case, we imagine that a solution is found that requires modification of the detection efficiencies to include parameters that represent radial offset from the nearest extended source, because remember, these were all nuclear transients. And we also need to know that source's color and morphology so that we can make a detection efficiency correction based on proximity to the core of an extended object. So that's our imaginary solution. The solution would be implemented by the data production team. It gets verified and validated by system performance, by the verification and validation team. And then we have to update our relevant internal and public-facing documentation about detection efficiencies to represent this change. And then perhaps community engagement team advertises this change to extragalactic science collaborations, and of course, more broadly in a regular newsletter or a community post, that kind of thing, to let people know that there's now this difference in this data product. So that's the kind of use cases we're looking for. In that feedback form that we've linked here at the end, there's a question about use cases. You don't have to think through the solutions as well. Just come up with problems that we can pretend to solve, and that will help us a lot to make sure we have all of our components in place and that we're thinking about our workflows in the right way. And that brings us to exactly 1 hour. So I want to thank everyone very much for coming, participating, putting in your questions. I'm going to take everything that shows up in the Zoom chat and copy paste it into Slack, and we're going to get all your questions answered, throughout the day. And please also continue to discuss community engagement in that Slack channel for the rest of the meeting, and use our feedback form. So thanks everyone, virtual applause for showing up. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks everyone for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.